Have you ever been in a season where everything in you wanted to speak, to fight, to explain, but God told you to be silent? Not because you were defeated, but because He was about to do something so powerful your words would only get in the way. This is not the silence of weakness, it's the silence before the storm of blessings. It's the sacred stillness before a miracle that will speak louder than anything you could ever say. God doesn't need noise. He needs your trust. And sometimes the loudest declaration of faith is silence. Be still. That is the command that echoes not from man, but from the throne of God Himself. Be still now, because you are weak, not because you are unsure, not because you lack purpose, but because God is doing something in the silence that noise cannot explain. There is a moment in every believer's life when God says, be quiet, wait, trust, don't announce it, don't fight it. Just be silent until I bring the miracle. And in that moment, your obedience in silence becomes your loudest declaration of faith. You see, the world teaches us to speak up, to defend ourselves, to react, to make our voices heard, but God works differently. God says, I will fight for you. You need only to be still. When God is preparing a miracle, He often demands your silence. Why? Because some blessings are too sacred to be exposed to human interference. Because what God is about to do in your life will not require your explanation, your announcement, or your defense. It will speak for itself. There are moments when the storm rages and you want to shout your pain, you want to cry out your confusion, you want to scream your disappointment. But God whispers, hush, hold your peace. I am working behind the curtain. And those who obey, those who choose silence in the middle of chaos there, the ones who witness the glory of God in full measure. Because silence is not weakness, silence is reverence, silence is trust. Silence is the language of those who know that God is still on the throne. Think of it. When a seed is planted in the earth, no sound is heard, no trumpet sounds when the roots take hold, no announcement is made when the first sprout pushes through the soil. But beneath the silence, something is growing, something is shifting, something is becoming. So it is with your life. While the world sees stillness, God sees preparation. While others see nothing, God is nurturing a miracle beneath the surface of your silence. You must understand, when God tells you to be silent, it is not to punish you, but to protect what He is birthing in you. There are spiritual enemies who feed on your words. There are people in your life who would destroy your dream if they heard even a whisper of it. That's why God silences you, not to stop your destiny, but to preserve it. Some miracles require privacy. Some victories must begin in the quiet place, where only God sees and only God knows. There is a holy power in being silent when everything inside you wants to speak. When they lie about you, God says, be silent. When they misunderstand your heart, God says, be silent. When they walk away and you're tempted to chase after them, God says, be silent. Because your silence is not the end of the story. It is the opening act of something glorious. You are not losing when you are quiet. You are building. You are trusting. You are aligning with the rhythm of heaven, where stillness speaks louder than words. Let them think what they want. Let them draw their conclusions. Let them assume. You do not need to defend yourself when God is your defender. You do not need to argue when the truth will outlive the lie. You do not need to explain when God is about to make it clear. Some miracles are so divine, so sacred, so overwhelming, that the only right response is to step back and let God speak through the outcome. Too many people miss their miracle because they couldn't stay silent long enough to see it unfold. They opened their mouth and exposed what God meant to hide. They told people who weren't meant to understand. They defended themselves when God was already preparing their vindication. But not you. You will be different. You will wait in silence because you trust the God who does not sleep, who does not forget, who does not fail. You see, silence is not passive, it is powerful. Silence does not mean nothing is happening, it means everything is happening. But under divine management, the most powerful moments in your life may come not when you shout, but when you are silent and let God move. Your silence becomes a sanctuary. It becomes a testimony. It becomes a holy space where God says, now I can work without interference. When God tells you to be silent, He is inviting you into a sacred partnership. He's saying, let me speak for you. Let me make the way. Let me shut the mouths of the lions. Let me silence your accusers. Let me show them what I can do with a vessel that knows how to wait in stillness. Because those who wait in silence are those who rise in strength. They don't waste energy trying to prove anything. They don't exhaust themselves explaining to people who were never meant to understand. They conserve their faith. They protect their promise. They guard their peace. And yes, it's hard. It's hard when you're misunderstood. It's hard when people walk away. It's hard when your name is dragged through the mud and all you want to do is shout the truth. But God is not asking you to shout. He's asking you to trust. He's asking you to let Him reveal the truth. Because when God vindicates you, it will be undeniable. When God blesses you, even your enemies will have to admit that something divine has taken place. So do not fear the silence. Do not curse the quiet season. That silence is sacred. It is the pause before the breakthrough. It is the breath before the birth. It is the stillness before the storm breaks in your favor. Some of the loudest victories begin in absolute silence. When you learn to be silent in faith, you allow God to speak in power. There are seasons in your life when you must walk with sealed lips and open hands, not because you have nothing to say, but because you trust the one who says it all. God does not need your explanations. He does not need your arguments. What He needs is your surrender. And silence is a form of surrender. Silence says, I could speak, but I choose to trust. Silence says, I could fight, but I choose to believe. Silence says, I could explain, but I choose to wait on God. And God honors that kind of faith. He honors that kind of discipline. Because He knows the power that is coming. He knows the miracle that is on the way. And when it comes, it will speak volume. The very people who doubted you will have no choice but to watch. The very situations that tried to break you will become the foundation of your testimony. But only if you can stay silent long enough to see it through. The silence is not empty. It is full of God's movement. It is full of angels being dispatched. It is full of closed doors being unlocked. It is full of favor that is being arranged. It is full of the impossible bending to the will of the Almighty. But if you speak too soon, you disrupt the flow. If you act too early, you miss the perfect timing. If you try to handle it yourself, you might delay what was meant to come quickly. So be silent. Not in fear, but in faith. Not in weakness, but in wisdom. Not in defeat, but in divine expectation. Because something is coming. Something is shifting. Something is being orchestrated that you couldn't plan even if you tried. But it requires your stillness. It requires your restraint. It requires your ability to sit in the presence of God and let Him do what only He can do. Some of you have been praying for something big, something life-changing. And God heard you. But now he's saying, let me work. Let me finish what I started. Stay quiet while I build the miracle. Your job is not to announce it. Your job is to prepare for it. Your job is to stay in the secret place, holding on to your peace, keeping your mouth shut and your heart open. Because the more silent you become, the louder God will speak through the outcome. The more you resist the urge to speak prematurely, the more glorious the testimony will be when the time is right. And when it happens so, when it happens, it will not require an introduction. The miracle will be its own announcement. The blessing will be its own defense. The power of God will be so evident that even the doubters will fall silent. You do not have to fight for what God has already promised you. You do not have to scream for what God has already secured. Be silent and let the evidence speak. Be silent and let the harvest reveal what was planted in secret. Be silent and let God show the world who He has been shaping you to become. Because the truth is, the ones who are the most powerful in the kingdom are not the loudest. They are the most obedient. They know when to speak and when to be silent. They understand the rhythm of God's timing. And when you learn that rhythm, you will walk in a peace that cannot be shaken and a power that cannot be stopped. So do not despise the silence. Do not rush out of it. Embrace it. Honor it. Because in that silence, God is building something eternal. In that stillness, God is preparing something unshakable. And when the appointed time comes, your silence will break into celebration. Your stillness will explode into blessing. Your waiting will be rewarded with wonders. When God calls you to silence, He is not pushing you away. He is drawing you in. He is inviting you into a deeper intimacy, a divine closeness where the noise of the world fades and only His whisper remains. In that sacred silence, your soul becomes attuned to things that others cannot perceive. Your ears begin to hear not the opinions of men, but the directions of heaven. And in that silence, your spirit becomes strong, not through speaking, but through listening. Because there are revelations that only come when the mouth is shut and the heart is wide open to God alone. God does not rush. His power is not hurried. His timing is not dictated by your anxiety. God moves with purpose, with precision, and with perfect wisdom. And sometimes the silence is His signal that He is orchestrating something far beyond your current understanding. While you're worried about how things appear on the surface, God is working deep underground, aligning circumstances, shifting hearts, and preparing the moment when the curtain will rise and His glory will be revealed. But until then, He tells you to hold your tongue not because you are voiceless, but because your voice is being preserved for a greater proclamation. There is strength in restraint. There is victory in waiting. God honors the one who trusts His pace more than their emotions. When you feel surrounded, when you feel overlooked, when your spirit is weary from battles that no one sees, do not break your silence with fear or frustration. Speak only in prayer. Speak only in faith. Let your soul cry out to God in the quiet, not in the noise of panic, because God hears what no human ear can catch. He listens to the silent prayers, the ones that have no words, only groans, tears, and unspoken hopes. Do you know why God wants you to be silent before the miracle? Because words have power. And in moments of testing, careless words can sabotage divine timing. You might confess doubt when you should be declaring trust. You might invite negativity when you were meant to guard your atmosphere. You might release fear into your environment when faith was supposed to saturate the room. That's why silence is not just avoidance, it is spiritual discipline. It is strategic stillness. It is guarding the atmosphere of your miracle. God is not asking you to pretend everything is fine. He's asking you to put your trust in the unseen. He's asking you to stop managing the outcome and start surrendering to His authority. Because your silence is not ignorance, it is recognition. Recognition that God is wiser than your plans. Recognition that your insight is limited, but His vision is eternal. And when you choose to be silent, you are proclaiming with your soul, I don't need to know everything, I only need to trust the one who does. There are sacred moments in life when your silence becomes your shield, when words would only ignite warfare that God never meant for you to fight, when explanations would only feed curiosity that God never intended for others to have. Some things are meant to be carried in silence because they are too holy to be mishandled by careless ears. God is saying, let me conceal you for now. Let me preserve this for the right time. And if you obey, if you stay silent when everything in you wants to speak, you will witness a miracle that no human power could manufacture. Silence is not a pause in your story, it is part of the plot. It is a page being written with invisible ink, soon to be revealed under the light of God's timing. You may not see it now, but silence is sacred soil. It is where your roots grow deep, your character is refined, and your spirit is anchored. When God keeps you quiet, it is not rejection, it is preparation. You are being forged in the fire of faith. You are being trained to carry glory that cannot be tainted by the noise of this world. Don't confuse silence with stagnation. Just because you don't see movement doesn't mean there isn't progress. God does some of His most powerful work in the dark, in the quiet, in the unseen. Look at the sky, it moves in silence. The earth rotates without a sound. The heart beats without shouting. The most essential forces in life operate without noise. So it is with God. His greatest acts often come wrapped in silence until the moment they explode into undeniable reality. God may silence you not to hold you back, but to push you forward without distraction. He may be keeping you quiet so He can shield your vision, protect your growth, and prepare your breakthrough in a chamber of stillness. Sometimes the silence is your ark, the place where you are sealed off from the flood of confusion and opinion. God shuts the door, not to isolate you, but to preserve you. And when the rain stops and the waters recede, you will step out into new territory, refreshed, renewed, and ready. God is not in the business of empty silences. Every quiet season has a divine purpose. Every unanswered question, every restrained word, every withheld explanation, it all serves a greater plan. You may not understand it today, but one day, when the miracle unfolds, you will look back and thank God that He taught you to keep your peace. Because if you had spoken too soon, if you had exposed the vision too early, if you had tried to explain what only heaven could interpret, you might have delayed what was destined to be yours. You must understand, God is not only working in your situation, He is working in you. The silence is molding you. It is teaching you the strength of stillness, the courage of surrender, the wisdom of restraint. You are learning that not everything deserves your reaction. Not every situation requires your words. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing, and let God be the one who responds. Even when they question your silence, even when they mock your stillness, even when they pressure you to speak, stay grounded. Trust that God sees what others don't. Trust that He is building a testimony that will require no introduction. Trust that what He has promised in the quiet will come to pass in the light. And when it does, those who laughed at your silence will be silenced by your results. Let your quiet confidence in God become your shield. Walk through the storm with peace. Let the winds rage. Let the doubters speak. Let the noise risen on of it will move you. because you are anchored in the presence of the Almighty. You don't need to shout when heaven is already roaring in your defense. You don't need to prove yourself when God is the author of your reputation. In time, the silence will end. In time, the voice of God will thunder. In time, the miracle will manifest. And when it does, your obedience will have been the seed that unlocked it. So hold fast. Don't break the silence just to satisfy the flesh. Don't disrupt the process just to ease your emotions. There is a reward for those who wait quietly, faithfully, fully surrendered to the will of God. When the appointed time arrives, your silence will turn to song. Your stillness will erupt into strength. Your private trust will produce public breakthrough, and all will know it was not your words that brought the victory. It was your surrender. It was your obedience. It was your willingness to be silent, even when silence was misunderstood. There is a time when silence becomes your shield, not just from the chaos around you, but from the traps the enemy sets ahead of you. The enemy thrives on your reactions. He listens closely to your panic, feeds on your impatience, and seeks to twist your words against you. But when you are silent, truly silent in the presence of God, you strip the enemy of his weapon. You confuse the camp of darkness because they cannot figure out what you are thinking, what you are planning, or what you are expecting. Silence frustrates the enemy because it means you're no longer reacting, you're waiting. You're no longer trying to control, you're surrendered. And when you surrender to God, no force on earth or in the unseen world can stop what He has ordained. There is a stillness that does not come from laziness, but from boldness. It is the stillness of the one who knows, I've placed it in God's hands and I will not pick it back up. There is strength in sitting down when everything in you wants to rush ahead. There is wisdom in keeping quiet when everything in your flesh wants to scream. And there is power in trusting that the one who formed the stars is perfectly capable of handling the details of your life. God is not seeking those who panic in the waiting. He is seeking those who trust in the pause. Do you know why God tells you to be silent before the miracle? Because He wants you to recognize that He alone is the source. Not your words, not your wisdom, not your networking, not your charisma, only God. He wants your testimony to be free from contamination, free from pride, free from the fingerprints of man. That when the blessing comes, it will be undeniably marked by the power and presence of God, and no one else will be able to take the credit. The silence is not a punishment, it is a purification. It is the place where your motives are refined, where your desires are tested, where your heart is aligned with God's will and not your own. In the silence, you are stripped of distractions, illusions, and pride. You are brought face to face with the reality that no matter how loud the world gets, the only voice that truly matters is the voice of God. Some people cannot handle silence because they are addicted to noise. They seek validation from people. They chase applause. They need someone always agreeing with them to feel right. But when God takes you into the silent place, He severs your dependence on external affirmation. He detaches your peace from people's approval. He teaches you to live off of His voice alone. And that kind of transformation cannot be bought, cannot be borrowed, cannot be imitated. It can only be learned in the stillness with God. You see, when you stay silent, you are not just avoiding speaking, you are tuning in. Tuning in to hear the instructions that only come in stillness, because there are assignments that God will only whisper, not shout. There are directions He gives only to the soul that is quiet enough to receive them. If your life is filled with constant noise, constant venting, explaining, overthinking, you may miss the subtle nudge of God that shifts everything. But in silence, you become sensitive. You begin to discern what others overlook. You begin to walk not by reaction, but by revelation. And here's the truth many avoid. Not everyone is meant to understand what God is doing in your life. Some things are so holy, so delicate, that even sharing them too soon can cause spiritual damage. There is a reason God says, conceal a matter until the time is ripe. Your silence becomes a covering for the sacred. When you keep quiet, you preserve the oil. You protect the process. You shield the seed until it becomes fruit. Do not let the pressure of others force your voice before God gives you permission to speak. Let the world assume, let them question, let them laugh. Because in the end, it won't be your argument that convinces them, it will be the undeniable manifestation of what God has done. There is coming a moment, if you remain faithful, when your silence will burst into a result so clear, even your critics will fall silent. That is the power of letting God handle what your mouth wants to manage. And in that stillness, your relationship with God deepens. You begin to experience not just what He does, but who He is. You no longer serve God just for the miracles. You serve Him because you trust His character, even when there is no evidence around you. That's where maturity begins, not when you praise God after the blessing, but when you can be silent before the blessing, because you know He is working even when you see nothing. Silence allows God to expose what cannot be seen in the noise. Sometimes it is in your quietest season that the deepest healing takes place. You begin to confront yourself. You realize how much you were trying to force, how often you were trying to fix what only God can redeem. You stop talking to everyone else and finally start talking to God in a way that is raw, real, and reverent. And that silence becomes your secret weapon. You enter rooms with unshakable calm, because you've already cried in the secret place. You walk with confidence, not because life is perfect, but because you are no longer trying to control it. You let God be God. And when you do that, peace reigns in your heart, even if chaos surrounds your life. You don't need to defend what God is building. You don't need to announce what God is preparing. Just stay aligned, stay quiet, and stay faithful. There is more power in quiet consistency than loud opinions. When you honor God in the waiting, you are sowing into a harvest that no enemy can block. And there will come a day when everything you remain silent about, every promise you held in your heart, every tear you cried in secret, every prayer whispered through clenched teeth will be answered not with explanation, but with evidence. People won't have to ask what happened, they'll see what God did. The doors will open, the favor will fall, the healing will manifest, the opportunity will arise, and they will know it was God and only God. There is a sacred mystery in the way God works that defies human logic. We live in a world obsessed with instant results, constant communication, and quick validation. But God is not bound by the noise of the world. He is drawn to the stillness of trust. While the world shouts for answers, God whispers to the soul that waits in silence. While others panic in uncertainty, those who know God walk quietly, confidently through the valley, knowing that silence in the hands of God is never empty. It is preparation. It is strategy. It is power wrapped in quiet surrender. Silence is not an absence of faith, it is the very evidence of it. When you can keep quiet in the middle of the storm, when you can resist the urge to speak before God has finished what He's doing, when you can stand in the middle of delay without doubting His presence, you are walking in a dimension of spiritual maturity that few ever reach. Because silence is not just the absence of speech, it is the fullness of trust. It is the soul saying, God, even if I don't understand it, I believe you are good. Even if I don't see the way, I know you are leading. Even if I don't hear the answer, I know you have already spoken it into existence. In this world, we are trained to announce every step, to promote every decision, to gather approval from others before we even begin. But when God places a vision inside you, He often requires that you conceal it until it has matured. You are not hiding it out of fear, you are guarding it out of honor. You are protecting what is holy from being handled by what is carnal. Because when something is in seed form, it is vulnerable. And God says, let me water it in silence. Let me grow it in secret. Let me prepare the soil before you shout to the world what I've begun in you. When you remain silent, you are not disengaged. You are aligning yourself with a deeper current. You are stepping into the divine rhythm of patience and purpose. You are no longer reacting to the noise of the world. You are moving to the heartbeat of heaven. And when you move with God, you do not need to rush. You do not need to explain. You do not need to convince. Time itself becomes your ally because time in God's hand becomes a servant to your destiny. Some of you are being tested in the waiting room of silence. You are sitting between the promise and the fulfillment, and everything in your flesh wants to speak. You want to justify yourself. You want to rush the outcome. You want to declare what hasn't yet manifested. But hear this with the authority of spiritual truth. If you wait upon God in silence, you will be preserved, protected, and positioned in ways that the loud and impulsive will never understand. Let them question your stillness. Let them misinterpret your quietness. Let them assume you have nothing to say, because soon the fruit will speak. Soon the outcome will roar louder than anything you could have said. And in that moment, your silence will be vindicated, because it was not silence out of weakness, it was silence out of obedience. It was not fear, it was reverence. You were not mute, you were listening. And the one who listens in silence is the one who will hear the secrets of heaven. God does not reveal His deepest plans in the clamor of the crowd. He speaks in the stillness. To the one who turns off the noise, who shuts the door, who quiets the soul before Him and says, God, I don't need the world's noise, I need your guidance. That is the soul God will fill. That is the life God will use. That is the vessel God will pour out His glory upon. You must learn to trust that silence is not avoided, is a vessel. A vessel that holds the promises, the instructions, the whispers of God that carry more weight than the loudest human voice. When God instructed His chosen ones to walk around the city walls without speaking a word, it was not for lack of courage, it was a divine strategy. Because sometimes the miracle does not come when you shout, it comes when you are willing to walk in silence, trusting that the command of God is greater than your need to be understood. There are moments in your life when the silence will be your shield from destruction. If you speak too soon, you may reveal the blueprint to those who will sabotage it. If you share too early, you may allow doubt to enter through the voice of others. But if you wait, if you hold your peace, if you stay silent under God's covering, He will bring you out in such glory, such undeniable victory, that no words will be needed. The miracle will declare its own origin. The blessing will testify of its source. Do not underestimate the value of unseen growth. Do not despise the quiet season. Do not curse the days when it seems nothing is happening. Because in the hands of God, the invisible becomes invincible. In His time, the hidden becomes holy. What you sow in silence, you will reap in glory. What you carry in secret, you will birth in power. But only if you trust the process enough to keep your mouth closed and your heart open. God is not a God of confusion. He is a God of perfect order. And part of that order is teaching His people when to speak and when to be silent. The world may never understand the strength it takes to be still. They won't see the tears you cry behind closed doors. the prayers you whisper into your pillow, the trust you carry when nothing makes sense. But God sees, and He honors that kind of faith. He responds to that kind of discipline. He is moved by the soul that says, God, I will not try to control what only You can complete. I will stay silent until the miracle speaks. And when it does, it will shake the foundations. It will silence the critics. It will shift the atmosphere, because a miracle birthed in silence carries the fingerprint of God in ways that nothing else can. It cannot be explained. It cannot be denied. It cannot be touched by human arrogance. It is pure. It is holy. It is divine. There comes a time in every soul's journey where the only answer God gives is silence. And that silence is not absence, it is divine intention. It is not neglected, it is sacred design. Because silence is where God pulls you out of the noise, the distractions, the false securities of this world, and draws you into the secret chamber of trust. He is not ignoring you. He is refining you. He is not punishing you. He is preparing you. In that quiet space where it seems nothing is moving, nothing is changing, nothing is speaking, God is laying the foundation for something that will shake everything around you when it comes to pass. Silence is not avoided, it is an altar. It is where pride dies. It is where ego is crushed. It is where dependence on self is dismantled. It is where you stop asking God to bless your timing and start surrendering to His. And when you reach that place, when you no longer need the reassurance of constant signs, when you no longer crave the validation of people's approval, then God knows you are ready. Ready not just to receive the miracle, but to carry it, protect it, and steward it with reverence and humility. God's silence is never without purpose. It teaches your spirit how to mature. It trains your inner man to see beyond the natural. While others are reacting to what they can see and hear, you are walking by something higher, by conviction, by faith, by an unshakable knowing that the Creator of all things is working behind the scenes. You are not blind, you are focused, you are not lost, you are being led through a path that no eye has seen and no ear has heard. And for that kind of journey, silence is not just required, it is holy. God sometimes commands silence because speaking too soon would contaminate what is sacred. He knows that premature speech opens the door to human interference. Sometimes even well-meaning people can speak fear, doubt, or confusion into something that was never meant for their ears. That is why God will seal your lips not as a punishment, but as protection. He will keep your vision hidden in the womb of time until it's ready to be birthed in power. And when that moment comes, it will arrive not with the noise of men, but with the thunder of heaven. The silence is a spiritual cocoon. It's where transformation takes place. The caterpillar doesn't announce to the world what it's becoming. It simply withdraws. Silences the noise, disappears for a time, and in that hidden place, the miraculous begins. So too, God pulls you away, covers you in silence, and begins the sacred work of changing you from the inside out. And when He finally brings you forth, you will not be the same. You will not need to explain what happened. Your presence will carry the evidence. Your peace will testify. Your victory will speak volumes. People may mock your silence. They may question your inactivity. They may misread your restraint as weakness. Let them. Let them assume. Because when you are silent by God's instruction, you are not standing still. You are standing in position. You are not being passive, you are being sharpened. And when the time is right, God will release you like an arrow straight into the target of His will. But if you move too early, if you speak too soon, if you step out before He says go, you could forfeit what was already yours. There is a divine authority that comes with obedience to God's timing. It is not loud, but it is unshakable. It does not boast, but it cannot be denied. It is the authority of one who has been tested in silence, refined in waiting, and released in perfect alignment. That kind of authority cannot be taught. It must be cultivated in the fire of surrender. And only those who walk through the valley of silence and still choose to trust God will carry it. When God tells you to be silent, He is saying, let me speak for you. Let me show them who you are. Let me reveal the truth. Let me bring justice. Let me shine light on what has been hidden. You do not need to rush to defend yourself. You do not need to fight every accusation. When God is involved, He will not only vindicate you, He will elevate you, and your silence will become your crown. There is something deeply powerful about refusing to speak against what God is allowing, even when it hurts, even when it seems unfair, even when the waiting is long. When you stay silent in submission rather than lashing out in frustration, you are telling God, I trust you more than I trust my own understanding. And that kind of trust moves the heart of God. It invites Him into your situation in a way that words never could. Let this truth burn into your spirit. Silence in God's hands is never wasted. Every second of your quiet obedience is building a testimony that will thunder when it is released. You may not feel it, but roots are growing. You may not see it, but foundations are being strengthened. You may not hear it, but doors are unlocking in realms you haven't even entered yet. And when the appointed time arrives, God will reveal what He was doing all along, and the silence will have been the soil that nourished the miracle. So endure the silence with courage. Embrace the stillness with reverence. Do not rush to speak, just to feel in control. Do not allow your impatience to drown out the quiet voice of God. There is power in staying quiet until God gives the release. And when that release comes, it will come with undeniable evidence. It will come with favor no man can fabricate. It will come with a peace that silences every voice of doubt. Remember, even the earth had to wait in silence before light was spoken into existence. Even the night must yield in stillness before the morning breaks. And even your life must sometimes dwell in silence before the next season begins. Don't fear the quiet. Don't fight the pause. Don't resent the wait. God is not inactive. He is preparing something so complete, so holy, so divine, that it requires a stillness you must honor. So remain grounded. Let the silence do its work. Stay humble in the hidden place. Keep your spirit surrendered. Let your silence be worship. Let it be faith in its purest form, not spoken, but lived. And when God moves sand, He will move. Your silence will become a song. Your stillness will become strength. And your waiting will birth wonders that no words could ever fully describe. And now, beloved soul, hear this final truth with the weight it deserves. Silence is not the absence of faith, it is the highest expression of it. When you choose to close your mouth and open your heart to God's timing, you are declaring with your entire being, God, I trust you more than I trust my feelings. I believe in your plan more than I believe in what I see. That kind of faith does not tremble, it stands firm. That kind of obedience does not waver, it waits with holy expectation. You may be in a season right now where everything seems still. The world is moving around you. People are making noise. Things are happening for others. And yet God has told you to be silent. Do not resent this moment. Do not despise the quiet. For what God is doing in the silence will become the loudest testimony of your life. He is building something in you that can only be birthed in stillness, something pure, something lasting, something that cannot be touched by the hand of man. So hold your peace, guard your spirit, trust the process. The same God who called you into the silence will be the God who brings you into the miracle. And when that miracle arrives, it will not need an introduction, an explanation, or even your voice, because it will carry the unmistakable signature of God Himself. Until then, stay still, stay faithful, stay silent. Because the silence is not the end, it is the sacred beginning, and when God moves, all will know. It was not by your words, but by His power, not by your striving, but by His command. And your silence will have been the seed that unlocked everything